Welcome to Streaming with Two Dudes, a podcast about all things streaming. Each episode, we break down some of the best series, songs, movies, and shows. I'm one dude, Parker.
I'm the other dude, Jeff.
And dudes, this month, our theme is natural disasters, and which this almost was. And this episode, we are talking about This Is the End. But first, Jeff, what else have you been streaming?
All right, so last week, I mentioned we listened to an audiobook where the Crawdads sing, and our goal was to stream the movie. It does play on Netflix, and we were able to do that. And I'm going to have to join the club that I almost kind of put down last week of the book is so much better than the movie. Man, that played true big time here. I think in the future, I'm going to want to watch the movie first and then read the book. So, I mean, obviously, and I know, you spoke on this a couple days ago as well, but obviously, most of the time, the movie is going to have to leave out a lot of stuff from the book just because, they're of the time constraint.
Yeah.
Most of it ain't gonna be like Harry Potter where they devote 8-9 movies, to a novel series. But so there's that. But then the other thing I thought about is,
well, in all fairness, like except for the last two Harry Potter movies, each Harry Potter movie was did coincide with its own novel. So it wasn't like they broke up like one book into
yeah. Did you read the Harry Potter novels as well, or just the movies?
So I actually it was hit or miss. I definitely read the first one, and then I think maybe I read the fourth and the fifth one before I watched those movies. But the rest of them, I had watched the movies randomly before I read the books, but I've read all the books and watched all the movies. But I think those are the only ones that I actually read the books first.
Well, I think I did learn that.
I mean, there's other books I know I've talked about Holes.
Yeah,
that was but yeah. See, I'm actually the opposite of you, man. If I'm going to read the book and there's a movie about it, I would much rather read the book first because I feel like if you're going to go the opposite way about it, it takes away from the book, because you already have an image of who you've seen, on screen and what they sound like, and I don't know. I feel like you always make it better and more personal, maybe in your head, and it's more fun that way for me. But
I totally get that, but I think it's true the flip side as well. I felt like reading the book first strongly took away from the movie. It's almost like you go to sit down, you and a buddy go to a movie, and before the movie starts, he tells you everything about the movie. So there was, I'm used to watching a movie and seeing it and learning
but I will
everything
say this,
for the first time.
I'm going to say this, Jeff, about that movie in particular, and I didn't want to tell you this because I knew that you were going to watch the movie, and I haven't seen this personally, but I remember when that movie came out that it got it was popular, but I don't think it got great reviews. And I think that was from people that hadn't even read the novel, didn't like it. So I think it's in that particular case, I don't think the novel had anything to take away from the movie in general. But I mean, in some cases, I think it does. But I mean, at the same time, it's how many times will you reread a novel and love it, even though, but if the film, there's still times where the film is a good companion piece and you can enjoy both of them, I think. Because you're like, oh, they're doing it right. Oh, they got my person up there and they're doing it right. And you get excited about it. But
I mean, I think one thing it will for sure change is, of course, don't read a lot of books. Although I think we will do audiobooks a lot more, especially anytime we're traveling, because that made a trip a lot better. But um, I'm not going to be as insistent on only doing a book that has a movie
Yeah.
because again, I think, and like you said, it's very possible it just could have been maybe just the movie just wasn't that good. But I think even if the movie is really good, again, because you've heard me say many times, I'm not a big movie rewatcher.
Yeah.
No matter how great the movie is, I don't rewatch a lot of movies for the fact, to me it's hard to beat that first time.
Yeah.
You're learning the characters for the first time. I mean, everything's new. You're along the journey for the very first time, and there's no way to read a book first and then watch the film and have that same feeling. But I do completely understand why people say, "Oh man, the book is so much better
Yeah.
than the movie," because
Right.
there's just so much detail and you're in the thoughts and emotions of the characters a lot deeper than and the movie is so constricted as far as how they can pull off what's happening in the book. So it definitely gave me a very strong understanding of why I hear people say that a lot. But
Yeah.
the book loved it. The movie, it was just okay. But I am curious. What I
Read it,
like,
don't watch it. You heard it here
yeah,
first.
I am curious. Would I like the movie a lot better had I not already read the book? Um, I, I'm just curious. I'll never know, but and
Yeah.
that's okay, because especially I'll try not to give away too much, but there's kind of the big twist, and
Yeah.
a lot of times those big twists is what really makes or breaks a movie. Uh, well, going to the movie, I already knew about the twist,
Yeah.
so that whole part was taken away from me. But anyway, so yeah, I did stream it. Check it out. I mean, it's for those that haven't watched the novel and you will be learning and seeing and on the journey for the first time, you may find that you absolutely love it. But just to test my theory, I would like to pick one where I watch the movie first and then read a book and then see what I think and kind of how they compare going the opposite direction.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like for the Harry Potter, like for me, I don't know, like I was able to separate them almost, even though I knew what was going on. Like I kind of knew that there was more like in depth already with the first book. Um, so I kind of expected more storylines to like connect in different ways. With that, so yeah, but yeah, cool, man, awesome.
So did you finally get off of Love Is Blind? You got something new to report to us
Okay,
this
okay.
week?
So I will say, so they're still watching. We're still watching Love Is Blind. Um, when this episode airs, the weddings will have happened, and the live reunion has just aired. Like probably as this episode is airing, it's probably ending ish because I think it starts at like 8 p.m. on Sunday. So um the Parker that is watching this is not the same Parker that you're gonna know whenever this episode airs, because I will be a changed man. But I won't talk about Love Is Blind. Actually, I can talk about two things real quick because I touched on last week about an audiobook that I was talking about. And I actually recommend this to you, man, because you want to get into audiobooks that don't have movies about them. And I don't think these have anything to do like with any movies or anything like that. But um, it's called New Arcadia, and the second book, which is called Stage Two, just came out. Well, I say just came out. It came out like 6 months ago, and I'm just now getting around to it because I just now like found out that it had been released because I hadn't checked on it. Excuse me, and so I've actually started that. I haven't finished it yet, but I love the first book. It's kind of like I don't know if you've ever are you familiar with like Ready Player One at all, like the film or the
I mean,
novels?
I've not. I mean, I've
Okay,
heard of them, but I haven't seen or watched them.
so the premise is sort of similar. It takes place in like a post-utopian society where a lot of the main storyline takes place in virtual reality, but that's about where it ends. Because the rest of it is kind of a, it's not really like based on like it's not kind of like the same style of game mechanics or the same, I guess, world at all. And the same storyline is totally different. But I definitely recommend it. It's called New Arcadia. I've been listening to the audiobooks, but I'm sure the books are great too. But I'm also going to talk about this other show on Netflix. It's called I'm sure plenty of people have watched this because it's the number one show on Netflix as we're recording this, but it's called Beef. It is so funny. I haven't finished this either, but I'm like 4 or 5 episodes deep into it right now. And it basically starts out with this one guy, he's like a handyman, and then this one woman, she's kind of like the CEO, entrepreneur, and her and this guy like cross paths in like a road rage incident, and like he writes down like her number or her license plate number and everything, and finds out who she is, and like goes and retaliates, and then she finds out who he is, and it just keeps going back and forth and back and forth, and kind of is like escalating, and like but like it's kind of like also going into like their personal lives and like why it kind of like led them to go through a road rage. So it's kind of like a bit of a drama, but also like a comedy at the same time, and it's kind of tense at it's great. It's great. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've seen the show Dead Like Me, or was it Dead to Me, I think, with Christina Applegate and like
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with
yeah,
it.
that it's kind of like that kind of like vibe, but not really, this obviously it's a different story, but with like the way it kind of just like is tense but funny and dramatic at the same time.
Yeah.
Love that vibe. But
How many episodes is in Beef?
I think it's probably 10. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
It's Netflix. It's a Netflix show. So
I've seen it advertised. Yeah, the last few times I've been on Netflix, I've seen it.
Yeah, because it's
kinda
like the
thrown
number
out
one
there a good
show
bit.
right now. Exactly, and it popped up on for me, and so I'm like, okay, I got to watch this because I haven't really been watching anything else, and I don't have any Love Is Blind episodes to watch right now, so I threw it on, and man, it's great. I loved it. I loved it.
Sweet.
Yes, definitely recommend it. Beef. So this month we watched, or this week we watched. This is the end. Not This Is the End.
So How It Ends, right?
How It Ends. Yeah, This Is the End is a totally different movie. Actually, it's about the apocalypse, but this definitely not this movie. How It Ends, Jeff. This was your pick, so tell me, what can you tell me about this movie?
All right. So I mean, I occasionally like to, and we're similar in a little ways in this area, but some of my greatest movie experiences are kind of like those diamonds in the rough. A movie that you go into, you don't know anything about it, you haven't heard any hype, there's zero expectations. So, occasionally when we're picking movies, I kind of like to look for one that I feel like neither one of us have maybe seen or we
Yeah.
haven't heard a lot about. So
Yeah,
this
I'll
one
do the same
definitely.
thing. I kind of do the same thing, like especially if it's like a movie in like a category that I'm not really familiar with. Like, that's kind of how
Yeah.
we watched, He Got Game.
So I mean, that was kind of the goal of mine, and then of course, I think I hinted last week that this one really came across my attention because it stars my wife's number one biggest celebrity crush in Theo James, who played Will Younger in this movie, but he was the lead male character in the Divergent series. If anybody's caught that one, but love the series. He was great in it. But yeah, my wife just totally adores him. So when I saw that he was in it, of course, Forrest Whitaker's in it. I've always loved him.
Love Forrest Whitaker.
And I was like, hey, it fits our theme, for kind of natural disaster, end time, whatnot. And so that's kind of where we went with it. So I was kind of briefly, I will preface by saying that there was like hardly any information on this movie. I was kind of joking with Parker earlier this week.
Yeah.
Like, dude, there's like a total of 7 items in the, trivia fun fact section. And I said, none of them are that interesting or fun. So, it is what it is. It'll probably help since, I blabbed so much last week because there was so much information. But as I mentioned, Theo James plays Will Younger. Mr. Theo, he's an English guy. He was born in Oxford, England. Of course, I mentioned he was in the Divergent series. He was also in a couple of the Underworld movies. He's done a lot of TV series work. Miss Cat Graham played Samantha Sutherland, Sam, which was Theo, who played Will Younger. It was his love interest. She probably most people will know her by Vampire Diaries, which I haven't watched. It's always been a show I thought I would want to check out.
I've never watched it either. I was kind of over the vampires like at that time for sure.
Yeah,
especially like another dramatic thing.
And turns out I have seen her in something, and this will shock you. But I saw her in a Christmas movie. She was in a Netflix original called Operation Christmas Drop. But now we'll throw something Parker's way. She did some voice work. Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, that's coming out, right?
She provided the voice in the movie and TV series.
Oh,
so she's done a lot of Netflix work as well. A couple of Netflix originals. Of course, you probably noticed in the movie with her complexion, it's like you're probably curious what is her nationality, because she's got such a beautiful complexion. I mean, she's gorgeous. Well, her father is Liberian. Her mother is from Russia, Polish Jewish family. So she was raised in her faith. So that's kind of her background. And then Mr. Forrest Whitaker, he's another one. I mean, he needs no introduction. I mean, this dude's been in a ton of stuff over the years. He played Tom Sutherland, so Sam's dad, and Will's hopefully, future father-in-law. Interesting thing about Forrest, he's only the 4th African-American male to win an Academy Award for Best Actor. I guarantee you Parker can name 2 of the other 3.
Sidney Poitier.
Maybe Parker can name all 3 of the other 3. That was the one I wasn't sure if you would get. But I mean, of course, there's a ton of guys to choose from. But
Denzel,
he's another one.
And then
the last one's not necessarily an obvious choice. I mean, when you hear the name, you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." But it's Mr. Jamie Foxx.
Oh.
So
yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that one, but that one does make sense.
So Forrest joins some very good company. I think it's Academy Awards for his role. Well, I won't say that. I don't know, but he was definitely known for The Last King of Scotland, movies like Vantage Point, The Great Debaters, and he's done a bunch of TV work as well. So a lot of my information on this movie isn't necessarily going to be directly about the movie, but more of the science maybe behind the movie, and then some real life examples. But the movie didn't do so well as far as reviews. It has like a 70% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Has an average rating of like 3 out of 10 at Metacritic. So it wasn't very well received. It was first greenlit in 2011. Netflix acquired the rights in 2017, and then it dropped in 2018. I've got only 2 tidbits as far as facts about the actual movie.
All right, let's hear.
Neither of them all that interesting, but I'll throw them out there anyway. Some of the soldiers in the movie at the roadblock scene were actual members of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Okay.
Canadian because most of the movie was filmed in Winnipeg, Canada.
Okay.
So now, most of my discussion is going to be, and you'll get into this obviously with your recap.
Maybe.
Tell you what, I'm going to share that. I'm going to share the rest of the information until after your recap.
Okay.
Because I think it will make more sense to go there. Because, like I said, it's not really interesting tidbits necessarily about the movie, but more about theories about the movie per se.
All right. Well, speaking of the recap, this is the part of the episode where I will completely screw up this movie by trying to tell it and recap it completely from memory. And I can already tell you right now that Jeff is going to give me a pretty low grade from ranging from an A plus to an F, just like I was giving an oral presentation in class. And um, when I'm done, that's when I find out, if I pass or fail this film. And we've been on a pretty good roll this month. Uh, so I'm I'm probably like in my like mid month slump, but I'm gonna blame the movie on this one.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get my ruler out. I'm like I'm gonna need to smack you.
You can go ahead and get your red pen out. All right. But first, and like I'm gonna go with actors' names again because and it'll be like this girl and that girl type things because horrible with names. So just bear with me on that. So we're gonna start out with Theo James and his wife. They're pregnant and they're talking about their baby. They're all excited about it. And they're talking, we find out they're not married. They're he's gonna go ask her parents for permission to marry the daughter. He's old fashioned like that. And they don't know about the baby.
So how uncomfortable, intense was that whole sequence?
Dude, like when he got there?
Yeah,
like oh man.
Yeah, with Sam's dad and his mom, or not his mom, but Sam's mom.
Yeah,
that was I mean, I felt extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, dude, I've been in that situation before where it's just completely uncomfortable and don't like it. It's not fun. Same kind of the same vibe, which I there was no good reason for me. But yeah, anyways, so he's there. Like you said, it's got a bad vibe with the parents. The mom asks him to leave, so he leaves before he even tells about, the baby or asks for her hand in marriage or anything like that. I skipped over. The reason that he doesn't like Theo is because, some boating incident. Don't mention it and blah blah blah. So that's the whole reason. And so he's leaving their house and he's talking to his wife and they're kind of talking about, how everything went and the conversations, they start getting some interference and she's like, freaking out and then they lose service and Theo realizes that, he's stuck in traffic and nothing's moving. They can't get to the airport because everybody's freaking out. Everything's gone down. There's no like communication. So he goes back to Forrest Whitaker and wife's house and they're already like getting prepared and Forrest Whitaker's like, like we got to, boss up. And so they decide to go to Seattle to save Forrest Whitaker's daughter and Theo James's potential fiance. So they take off and the first thing they do is they come into like contact with this couple. People are already rioting, like it's only been like a few hours and things are already gone to hell. Chaos has already ensued. People are they're trying to rob Theo James and then Forrest Whitaker is like, hey, I got some more money in the trunk. So he goes and he goes and pops the trunk and there pulls out a gun and chases him off. And then, for some reason, Will's mad that he has a gun. Oh, I remembered his name, Will. And so Will gets mad that he had a gun, and Forrest Whitaker, has to explain to him, blah blah blah. And so they're on their way, and
I'm actually glad you brought that part up because that whole sequence, I'm like, I don't know if it's because I'm in the South, but I'm like, why are they making such a big deal that he had a gun? I'm like,
no, I don't.
why is he so bothered by that?
Right, like I feel like any human being in that situation would be like, man, like, you know what I mean? Like, I can see somebody being upset, like, man, you didn't have to just come out with guns a-blazing, but like he literally just like used it to protect himself in the situation. Like, that's
Yeah.
exactly the. But anyways,
And of course, we find out later it wasn't even loaded. So,
right, right.
but I just thought that was weird. I was like, why is he so upset because he had a gun?
Right. I don't know. And I mean, he didn't really take me. I don't know. He had a weird vibe this whole time, anyways. So he honestly should not have survived. Like, if we're being honest, because he was like the dumbest person in this whole movie. He kind of just stumbled his way across the country. Um, so they're on the road. They're see blue lights behind them. They're freaking out. Oh no, they get to the interstate. Sorry, they get to the interstate finally, and they find out that it's closed. And the Canadian guards that you're talking about earlier. They have everything blocked off. They're not letting people on. They don't really know what's going on either, but with everything down, they're afraid, if people get in a wreck or anything happens, that you know, emergency services would not be able to get contacted or anything and get help. So it's for everybody's safety. And Forrest Whitaker, kind of explains the story to him, and the sergeant allows him to go through. And they're on their way, and then they get pulled. Then they get pulled over by a what they think is a cop, and they find out that it's just another scavenger who has stolen a police car and has a gun. They wind up overtaking the guy and taking the cop car and the Cadillac to this little, service station where they find this girl who is trying to make it to California to be a rapper, and she promises to fix the car if she can ride with them, and they agree, and so they're off, and then they come upon first they come upon I think it was like they see a couple have a wreck, right? And then they go up to it, and they can't really save anybody. So they're upset and everybody's bothered by it. And then these scavengers come up, and they start attacking everybody. And so that's when they try to go and like save them. And yeah, see, I forget what happens.
Well, I know
And then
there was the part where those guys stole their gas.
was that part? Was that part? I thought that was next, but yeah. So okay, we'll just skip over that part.
Soon afterwards for sure.
Yeah. So and then I think they got the gas from that place, right? Maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, somehow they obtain gas, and then these other scavengers come up, and they, it's because this woman that pretends to be pregnant and like hurt on the side of the road, they pull over to help, and that's when they get jacked for their gas. That's when that happens. And they chase after them, and they wreck, and they decide between saving them or getting the gas, because the car is on fire, and there's a leak and their car's leaking gas. So they grab the cans, and the girl, I think her name is Ricky, she does not like this. Actually before this, okay, so I do remember before this, they find like an abandoned water park during the day, and they pull up to it and they're just kind of exploring it. And Ricky's all excited and she goes to jump in a pool. And it's like the water's all hot because the temperature's been rising because, the world is, seems like it's coming to an end. Everybody's trying to, doesn't really, it never really actually says what's going on. It just kind of implies, which we can talk about that later. Um, and so, fast forward to where I was at originally, kind of just hopping all over the damn place. And so Ricky's, she's all upset because, she feels like they killed them, like, and she feels responsible for their death. And which, I mean, they kind of were, but at the same time, like they were trying to get their stuff back and survive. So in the morning, they find out that she is gone. She's totally left. We never see or hear from her again. And so they decide to, keep moving. And that's when they run into somebody else that's a scavenger. And I forget exactly what happens here. And then Forrest Whitaker gets injured.
Did you already cover when Ricky left?
Yeah, Ricky left the next morning after the car wreck when they took their gas back because she felt responsible and felt guilty and she wasn't cool with them anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Forrest Whitaker, he's injured, he's got a lung punctured. They find some stuff to help him so he can breathe a little bit, but he's still bleeding out. And him and Will start connecting in the car. And then
did you find it interesting that Will told Tom about the baby before he said anything about wanting to take his daughter's hand in marriage?
Oh, yeah, well, I guess he wanted to know, like that was more important,
Yeah.
like, hey, before you die, like this is more important, I guess. Like you're gonna be a grandfather more than it is like, hey, can I marry your daughter? 'Cause I guess it doesn't really matter at that point. He can just lie and say he got it anyways. He's like, yeah, he totally gave me permission. Um, and so they actually, Will tells that side of the story, or all that stuff, and then he also tells him, about the boat, which we find out that that she was the one that had wrecked the boat. She was totally drunk, and Will, who's Sam, by the way, and Will was the one that kind of took the rap for her so that Forrest Whitaker wouldn't be mad. And Forrest Whitaker's like, you're gonna be a great dad, and they have a bonding moment and kind of, have that little bond before Forrest Whitaker dies. And then Will is on his way. He kind of, gets into a few things here and there. Honestly, like I'll be completely honest, I only had time to watch this movie once, and I think you only watched it once as well. Um, and so like after Forrest Whitaker, like even as bad as I've already been like talking about this movie, when Forrest Whitaker left this movie, man, I mean Theo James is what he is, but when Forrest Whitaker left this movie, my my attention span dropped dramatically, and I could not pay attention. But I do remember, like, so I faded out really bad in this part right here. I don't really remember exactly what Will did. I know he got into a few like altercations himself before he makes it to Seattle. He finally makes it there. It looks like a wasteland, like everything is like covered in dust. And he finally makes it to his house where he, sees this address, like finds this note written on his door, written by Sam, like, hey, I'm alive. This is where I am. This is the address. Like, come find me. And so he gets there, and this guy comes out, pulls a gun on him, and he's like, hey, like, who are you? And then Sam rushes out. And she's like, don't, it's Will. Don't. And so we find out that Sam has already been like checking out with their neighbor. and he's, jealous of Will. And so, um, he's kind of getting bad vibes from Will's getting bad vibes from the neighbor guy. And the neighbor's like, "Hey, like, I saw some kids going through your truck. I saw, they live out in the woods. Let's go show them. Let's go, I'll go show you." And so they go out to the woods, and, Will realizes that he's about to get killed. So before he can when he pulls the gun on him, Will pulls his gun real fast and shoots him. And then that's when they realize that the world is, they got ashes falling from the sky, and Will can see that something bad's happening in the distance. So he goes and grabs Sam, and they get in the truck, and they start driving, and we see like what looks like an explosion. It's just like trailing, like it's like an avalanche of fire and explosion is just like crumbling towards them, and it starts getting closer. And right as it starts to hit their tailgate, it starts to ease up a little bit, and then we just see them drive off in the distance, and the end. So, Jeff.
So, a fun fact about that last part, which, if my research is correct, it was considered a pyroclastic cloud.
Uh-huh.
They typically average 400 miles an hour. So it's very
Oh,
impressive that they were able to outrun it
yeah,
in
for
their
real.
little vehicle. So,
For real.
uh,
Jeez.
so, so the neighbor guy, I think it was Jeremiah.
Okay.
So you think him and Sam pick a chicka wow wow?
Oh, they for sure did. Yeah,
You
for
think?
sure. Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, because he was always like, "We have a bond. I have a say in this." I mean, like, I don't know. So
I'm gonna give Sam a little bit more credit, just because it had only been like maybe what 5 days, maybe 6.
she's like, "We
Um,
thought you were dead." I don't think they would be that. I don't think she would be that defensive over like
yeah, like
we just live together.
it's very possible they did hook up. But part of me, and maybe I'm just wanting Sam to be good, because I'm like, as much as she supposedly loves him, she's having his baby. It ain't like it ain't like Castaway, where he had
Yeah.
been gone several months. It hadn't even been a full week. So part of me just thinks that Jeremiah has always been in love with Sam, the whole time, and this whole catastrophic event was his opportunity to
Nah,
finally get Sam, and
nah,
he was highly pissed to find out that Will was alive and now there in person.
nah,
Um,
nah. She
that
was
that
she
that's
was
what
pregnant.
that's
She
what
was
I'm going to hold on
pregnant.
to.
She was pregnant, and then a man came and saved her. And I'm not trying to like play any stereotypes or anything like that, because he did the same thing. He was just as guilty. So if his wife would have survived, he would have been just as guilty. But yeah, they. But I mean, and at the same time, like, it's hard to blame somebody in that situation too. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
the world's ending, and it's one thing. It's just like we could be the only two people left in the world right now. Like, we only
yeah,
have each other. And so I can see that happening really fast like that, especially if you think like your partners are dead.
yeah. Well, see, the weird thing and I'm sure you noticed too, the movie just took a weird turn in vibe, um, especially after Forrest Whitaker's character
Yeah,
died,
for sure.
especially when they introduced this Jeremiah character.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're not sure how weird and strange this movie is about to get. So therefore, a split second, I'm thinking, holy crap, Jeremiah is the dad
Oh man. Oh man.
of this baby. Uh, but
You're gonna find out he traveled the whole distance for
I
nothing.
mean, it's one of
She's like,
the,
I was actually about to leave you for him anyways.
yeah. It's just you didn't you just weren't sure how strange it was going to get. Now it turned out it didn't get really all that strange. It just
Right.
kind of just ended. It just ended.
Yeah.
Uh,
It did.
but
It straight up just ended like that. Just like that. With no rhyme
so
or reason.
what is your theory as far as what actually took place? What happened not only on the West
So,
Coast, but what happened, I guess, to the country in general?
so judging by everything that happened in it, I think and this is my theory. I think that it was some kind of a solar flare, or even more intense than that. I think like there's this thing where like scientifically, like where scientifically, of course, but like how like the North and South poles, how they are what they are.
Hmm.
Well, every like several hundred years, like multiple hundreds of years, maybe not, maybe it's even more than that. I don't know. I'm not exactly 100% sure. They switch, and when they do that, the magnetic fields are kind of like down, and they're kind of like the magnetic fields are what protects the Earth from like solar flares and like all of that good stuff. And so um that kind of like causes everything. Like it would cause like a solar flare would knock out like all of our electronics. It just well, yeah, so it'd have to probably be something like more like the solar or the poles switching. Because yeah, for a little while the world would be absolutely in chaos. Because if it was just a solar flare, it would probably be the like just be a, like electronics would be down and everything, like electricity and all of our power grid and everything would just be down for quite a while. I don't know how prepared we are, but from what I understand, we would be pretty screwed if just like a solar flare hit us. Um,
Yeah.
as far as like technologically wise. But what's your theory?
I, I'm not even gonna say it's technically my theory. It's just, I was just reading a bunch of stuff on the movie, after I
Uh-huh.
watched it. Uh, while watching the movie, I wasn't really spending a lot of time necessarily thinking or trying to theorize what it was causing. I mean,
Oh, I
the
was
fir-
paying attention to like everything because I'm like, this is not all the same. This is all different. Like,
yeah,
what's going on here?
yeah. I mean, I definitely thought it could have been a foreign threat. And they were attacking the West Coast, but then they, to maximize the impact, they took out all communications across the entire country. So I mean, I definitely thought that was a possibility. Um, but kind of, reading a lot of stuff afterwards, kind of your take on it was the main thing that most people agreed on, that it was likely some type of major solar storm or a geomagnetic storm.
Yeah.
NASA scientists do say that a large scale solar storm would likely destroy, all the artificial satellites circling the Earth, destruction of power grids, basically leave you without communication and electricity. So, that part of it, kind of based on what we saw in the movie, kind of lines up with that. They call it like a Carrington event. And actually, one of these events did take place in 1859, and like telegraph systems all over Europe and North America failed. Um, and there were multiple, like even recorded in history, eyewitnesses talking about the event, and even like the weird lighting in the sky, just describing a lot of things, or some of the things we saw in the movie.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, on July 23rd, 2012, so pretty recent, a Carrington class solar superstorm missed Earth by an inch. So that's how close. Now, of course, they're not saying that the after effect would have been what we saw in the movie,
No.
but just that as far as communication and disrupting that kind of stuff, very likely impact from large scale solar storm. Now, the earthquake part they said was likely exaggerated. They said a symptom like that might be thousands of years in the making after an event like that. So, but and I kind of briefly mentioned it later on, but like there at the end, that pyroclastic cloud. It's one of the most devastating phenomena that can occur on our planet. And actually had a similar event in Guatemala in actually June of 2018, so just about 5 years ago. It was, from a volcano eruption, and it kind of swept through the valley, and there's a lot of I won't say misinformation, just unconfirmed information or different numbers. Usually a lot of reports will say, 200 people died, but in some reports will say 300 people died, but 2,000 are missing. So it could be 3,000. So anyway, so at least a couple hundred people passed away, but it's basically just, it's like just a hot gas and volcanic matter. And when it's in that cloud form and it sweeps through, kind of the way the movie implied, don't get caught up in it because you're done if it ever comes. So, and I guess the approach the movie took as far as the solar type storm, I guess that disruption was enough, because you assume, at least this assumption I made, that the reason the West Coast took the brunt of it was from earthquakes and volcanoes that I guess triggered from I guess off the coast or right in that area. Because you get the impression that the West Coast took the brunt of it, but the impact on the rest of the U.S. apparently was just the chaos from the lack of communication and just the uncertainty of what had happened on the West Coast. But see, like you said, it's definitely one of those
storms and stuff too, though. Like, remember having like those gnarly, and then the heat waves, like everything was getting really, really hot as well. Like,
so definitely a lot of weird symptoms that were going on. And like you said, it was definitely one of those movies where they didn't answer any of those questions for you.
Right.
Which in one part kind of made it interesting because it keeps you guessing, instead of just, boom, Russia attacked, didn't just flat out give it to you. So it definitely kept you kind of guessing. So how did you feel about that approach as far as it not answering the question, just kind of leaving it out there and just leaving you with a plate full of implications, and they leave it up to the viewer to do with it what they may?
I mean, normally I really like that. And I mean, here I didn't dislike it. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't stand out as much I don't know. It's not as, in this movie, I feel like it wasn't handled right.
Yeah, it's not as effective.
Yeah, it's not as effective because it wasn't a great movie. Which, I mean, we can go ahead. I don't know how much more you have to say, but I mean, we can go ahead and actually get into ratings if you want to, real quick.
All right, so what am I going to rate this one?
We can rate this one out of 5. 5 Cadillacs.
All right. So how many Cadillacs do you think I'm going to give this movie?
I think you're going to give this movie 2.5 Cadillacs.
I'm going to surprise you a little bit.
All right.
I've mentioned before in a previous podcast that I tend to go into rating or grading a movie based on how I feel like it did up to its potential or its maybe expectations. Obviously, this movie didn't have a lot of high expectations, at least probably not between the two of us, because we didn't know a lot about it. Whatever. So I went into it thinking, all right, there's no chance this is going to even be over a 4. So I'm kind of already narrowing my grade down to a 4. So how much of that 4 does it hit? I actually really, really enjoyed this movie, probably the first hour, maybe even hour and a half. Kind of like what you said, up until the point where Forrest Whitaker's character died. I was actually really enjoying this movie. Now, I'm at an advantage because I don't watch a ton of movies. So I'm not watching this one and immediately comparing it to a bunch of other movies that did it a lot better. So
Yeah.
I kind of have that advantage. Had I seen a lot of other movies that did something similar, yeah, I'd probably be like, yeah, this sucks. But I haven't. So I was really enjoying this movie. And then it definitely changed after his character died, and it got a little weird, and then it just ended. And typically, I'm actually the opposite of what you said earlier. I usually don't like it when they just throw out the theories to you and they leave it up to the viewer,
Yeah.
because I'm the type of person, you're making a movie for me.
Yeah.
You're making the movie for the audience. We're the ones paying the money, whether it's the theater, whatever. Do your job.
You want
That's all.
every question answered.
Yes, don't I don't I want to turn my brain off. And I know not as a lot of people they like to think and be challenged, and I
Yeah.
don't. I like to turn my brain off. Just take me to another world. Just entertain me. Don't throw a bunch of crap out there and expect me to decide how I think it played out or what happened or what it really was. So typically I don't like that approach, but for whatever reason, I didn't mind it as much in this movie because, like I said, this movie was very limited. I think that was part of what kept it somewhat interesting, is because you didn't know.
Yeah.
So that's what kept me interested in finding out when they finally got to Seattle, what was it going to reveal? Whatever. So having said all that, I'm actually going to give this one surprisingly a 3.5 Cadillacs.
Okay.
Now you might say, well, Jeff, you gave Twister 3.5. So is this movie just as good as Twister? No, absolutely not. That's why I say I grade things differently. I felt like, Twister, the ceiling was a 5, and a lot of editing issues and that kind of stuff. So I felt like, since its ceiling was 5, they came within a 1.5 stars of hitting that ceiling. So a great movie. Whereas this one, I felt like the ceiling was 4, and I felt like they did pretty well with what it was going to be. It was never going to be a really great movie. So having said that, I mean, like I said, I was surprised that I was as entertained because, like I said, I went in with very low expectations. And I really enjoyed the movie, at least the first hour and a half. I thought the last 30 minutes was a letdown. So it's like the first hour and a half, I'm thinking, holy crap, I'm giving this movie a 4. And then the way it ended, I could have easily dropped down to a 2.5, to be honest with you. And I probably there for a while, I probably thought, yeah, this, don't take me on a ride like that and give me a sorry ending. But overall, I was like, you know what? I was really entertained the first hour and a half. Yeah, I'll be nice. I'll give it a 3.5.
Okay.
However, Parker's only going to give this 2 Cadillacs.
All right, Jeff. I'm going to disappoint you.
Okay.
Because, dude, so Forrest Whitaker. I mean, I remember Theo James from like the Divergent films, but I don't really remember I don't really know anybody else in this film, honestly. I don't think. And even him, I barely even know. So I didn't really have any attachment, and none of them really like kept me drawn in on the film. The only thing that was interesting was Forrest Whitaker, and even their interaction was all stereotypical, like it wasn't very interesting. Like I knew that something was gonna happen. They were gonna, I figured Forrest Whitaker was gonna die eventually. Um, I wish that I was wrong, but he did. And I don't know. It's just I was bored through most of this film, honestly, and I could barely pay attention when Forrest Whitaker was on screen, and when he got off of it, I was like, I literally zoned out. Even I don't even remember and I even remember like looking at the TV for most of it. I just don't remember anything that happened, and until I was like, "Oh, he's finally in Seattle. This movie's getting close to being over," and that's where I picked back up, honestly, and like tuned back in, I guess, because that's where I can remember from. And then the way it ended, man, it was just so dumb. Like I don't know. Like sometimes movies can do that, like if it's like a horror movie or something like that, where you see like the killer or something like right behind the person as they're like walking away, like that's effective because you want them leaving, but that was just dumb. It was like it wasn't it wasn't ambiguous enough. You know what I mean? Like because you saw it slowing down, so you're like, okay, but did they really get away? But it wasn't really like I don't know. It was just I feel like they just handled it so wrong. So I am going to only give this one Cadillac, dude.
All right.
This movie, I and I mean it definitely probably like has like because I mean my rating scale is totally different than yours. I rate it based on the category that it's in and how like how comparable it is like in that category. And I would never recommend this movie to anybody that wanted to watch any kind of like disaster film. Um, and if the only reason I would recommend it, and it's not even for Forrest Whitaker, because I did love Forrest Whitaker. I wouldn't even be like, you should watch it for Forrest Whitaker because no, don't even do it for that. Like the only reason I would ever even ask somebody to watch this film would be like, hey, if you know anything about solar events, what do you think that would this is this portrayal accurate at all? That would be the only thing I would ever want to ask somebody about watching this film. I'd be like, don't watch the storyline, just fast forward it to like what's going on and the weather events and tell me if like that's accurate. That would be the only reason I would ask somebody to watch this film. So yeah, one Cadillac, dude. One Cadillac.
Hey, it's good that it's probably been a while since we've had one where we were, I guess,
So
vastly
far
different.
apart. Yeah.
So it's good to have one like that. And like I said, I kind of figured that's where it would fall because yeah, I definitely knew like at the end. I think we've even joked about a movie before when it came to the ending. It's almost like an intern walks in. It's like they tell the intern, "Hey, wrap this movie up. It's your job's to handle the last 10, 15 minutes." And it's just
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah. I mean, like this is literally like this is the equivalent of like, okay, so like this isn't even one of like okay, this film is like literally like the equivalent of getting like a really bad fast food meal and like struggling to eat through it because you're like, I've got to eat because I don't know. I mean, in this case, we had to do it for a freaking review, but like getting to the very last bite and then finding like a band-aid and you know what I mean? Like that's literally how this like film felt to me, honestly.
Yeah. I am curious about something. If
Yes.
if this has been your experience,
Okay.
I have noticed watching these type of movies, whether it's natural disaster, end time, just like a major event, phenomenal,
Yeah.
mass chaos, whatever it might be. Used to when I watch these, of course, your mind's naturally going to think, man, what would it really be like if that
Yeah.
happened or what? But at the same time, even though my thoughts went there, I'm also thinking, well, it's a movie that'll never happen.
That's why you need to
At,
watch
le-
Contagion.
at least not in my lifetime. However, since COVID, when I watch stuff like this now, I'm like, anything's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy and wild and just surreal. The whole COVID situation was. Now, when I watch stuff like this, I'm like, it's very possible I'll experience something like that in my lifetime
I mean,
because
yeah.
I feel like all bets are off now after what we did, dealt with COVID. Whereas before this kind of stuff, I mean, yeah, I would like visually try to imagine what it would be like, but I never thought the chances of it actually happening. I always thought it was
Right.
very, very slim. And now I'm like, heck yeah, it's possible.
I mean, yeah, not just that, like, I mean, global warming is a very real thing, like, you know, not to get like political or not, but I mean, like, I mean, we even talk about it like, off podcasts a lot about how like, man, I can remember back when we were kids and the summers in the South, like, we're not this hot all the time and not this humid all the time. And we actually would have, snowy winters a little bit here and there, but now you don't get that at all. It's very rare, and when you do have it, everybody freaks out. But
You know what? I forgot to grade your recap.
oh yeah, what did you? Yeah,
So I'm going to give you. I'm going to be somewhat generous, but also a little harsh at the same time because I generally don't give you
that's
bad
fair.
grades on this recap. But luckily, in
It's
this
okay.
case, you're not going to care because this would be the equivalent of you like taking a class you didn't even want to sign up for anyway. So to you, just passing this class is the equivalent of an A in any other class. So I'm still going to give you a C.
Okay.
So
Well, I appreciate it.
you easily passed. All right. So to wrap this baby up, who's your dude or dud?
Um, I'm gonna go with a dud. Ricky. I mean, other than fixing the car, she literally did absolutely nothing that I can remember at all, except for whine and be a bump on the log like the whole time. And I mean, honestly, like I could literally just like I didn't even have that planned. I just picked somebody off the top of my head. I could have literally said like that was literally just the first name, and I was like, I couldn't think of I anybody except for Forrest Whitaker could have been a dud in this film, legitimately. Like he is literally the only dude, and if you pick a dude and it's not Forrest Whitaker, I'm going to be amazed. I'm going to need some good reasons because uh there was nobody else that was redeeming, honestly, and I will fight you for anybody else that's a dude that you try to say is a dude. And even Forrest Whitaker was a little bit like me. He was just the only one that was even dude worthy at all.
Yeah.
But, so who is your dude or dud? Who's your dud of the movie?
Yeah. Following up on that, well, lucky for you, I'm picking a dud.
Yeah.
So my dud's going to be the neighbor Jeremiah. And I'm like, come on, man. Just because you think the world's in, you got to move in on this guy's woman, and then
Right.
act all weird there at the end.
Right.
And
I could totally see. Okay, so like I could have understood like the whole getting with her real fast, but when he got like all defensive about it and got protective, that was when it got super weird. Like it was like, bro, like it has not been that long. Like
that's why I said I feel like he's been madly in love with her.
I mean, that's a possibility, but I definitely think that like
for a long time.
I still think I still think they were bumping uglies for sure.
It's very possible. It's very possible. So yeah, he's
at least once.
So at least since you hated the movie, you should at least be pleased that it got a double dud.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
But it's just a little payback because there's been a couple of movies I was below a 2, and they were all for your picks. So
that is fair.
You made me suffer a little bit.
I was like, man, I'm gonna kind of feel bad about talking shit about like so much shit about this movie because it's just pick. And then I was like, no, dude, he has gone in on like Ernest.
Yeah.
Like, who else did you got? Like, I know
there's been a few.
Yeah, I'm like, he's got like I feel like all the ones that you like went in on are like have been my picks. I'm like, I think it's getting personal at this point. Like, I should fire back some shot.
But what was the one with was it Luke Wilson? Was he in one of them? What, I don't even remember the name of it.
I don't.
I think it was the time travel. Where they went back in time, and it was just a really dumb. He was put in like a pod, and then.
Oh yeah, that was Luke Wilson. That was Luke Wilson. Yeah, Idiocracy. That was Idiocracy. Yeah, you didn't like Idiocracy. You didn't like
Harold and Kumar. Yeah, there was a few of them that I just
come on. Okay. All right. Really hated. All right. Yeah. I feel fine with.
Oh yeah, that's why it didn't bother me at all. I was like, it doesn't bother me that he's hating on this one because I've had to go through a few that I'm like, why is Parker doing this to me? But in my defense, the ones you picked, you knew about the movie. I mean, you had watched them, so you knew exactly what you were picking.
I knew it. Yeah,
I was at least picking one that I thought, hey, maybe this will be one of those surprises that you're not expecting it to be anything. You're like, holy crap, that's actually a pretty good movie. But
yeah, and the bad thing about it is I was picking films that were like more personal to me, that you just poop all over them. So, Jeff, you got a crazy question or an off the wall or a wacky doodle dandy question for me?
Actually, I have none
Okay.
this week, believe it or not.
It was fine. This has been a pretty long episode anyways, actually surprisingly enough that we kind of thought it was going to be a shorter one. So we kind of filled it up.
shorter compared to last week. So
Yeah. Especially, yeah, it's been pretty average otherwise, but longer than what we were expecting it to be. I thought before we recorded, we were talking, this is going to be like a little bit of a longer episode. But yeah, so next week we are doing our streaming original, and for that one we are going to be doing Don't Look Up. It's on Netflix. If you have not seen this film, please watch it so you can follow along with us next week, and you can listen to with Jeff and see how badly I screw up on that one. Yeah. So Jeff, anything else you got to say before we get out of here?
nope, keeping it low key this go around. I'm looking forward to this next movie though. I feel sure it's going to score better than this week's movie,
Yeah.
just because of. I mean, obviously this movie's a lot more well known than the one we just covered. Some big name people in it. I'm just feeling like it's going to be pretty decent, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I have you haven't seen this one yet?
I have not.
Okay. So I actually have seen this one. So my story with this one is actually kind of interesting because like when I not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before in 2021, Christmas of 2021, when I was flying back to Nashville for the holidays, I actually downloaded the film and watched it on the plane ride. So yeah, I actually that's my memory of this movie. So it'd be interesting to watch it again on an actual like TV screen. But yeah.
So you watched Don't Look Up while you were thousands feet in the air.
Yeah. I was not looking, actually I was looking down the whole time.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah. So Jeff, you got anything else before we get out of here?
Nope, nothing from me.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for doing this with me. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We really do appreciate it. If you would like to support us, you can do so by sharing the show, giving it to coworkers, family, friends, people you hate, people you love, whatever. Just spread the word for us. We really do appreciate it. You can also do a one-time rating, reviewing, and subscribing. All of those really do, help us out, and it kind of moves us up the charts. So anytime you do those, helps us get found, gets us like more exposure, which, can get us out there. If you would like to support us financially, you can do so by visiting our Patreon. That and our socials are down in the show notes. And thanks again. And remember, you literally have to know nothing about survival to make it through the apocalypse.
Peace
out. Actually, that was like the first time in a while that I've actually been able to come up with one on the fly pretty quick. Even though it wasn't a great one, at least I came up with one. So
well done.
Danke.
Although, were you not at least a little impressed that Will in the movie, how his skills suddenly improved with the gun and driving, and
it's like he leveled up from a video game.
Like you said, he was a total goof for all the movie, and all something clicked. Right, he's like a master with the gun. He's pulling off all these moves in the car. I was like, okay,
right.